thanks, Lynette. I noticed on our committee list, we need to fix the governor's name there. We have Governor John Hoeven. We need to change that to Governor Dalrymple now. Time flies, I guess. If you go to the, and one thing before we go to the next slide, I really want to compliment Lynette because she is the one that got this whole thing going. Back in 2006, she used some money she had through Center for Rural Health to get this whole health information technology topic out there for North Dakota, and she organized some meetings, and we asked for volunteers, and we got a large group of volunteers who continued to meet. In 2007, we had legislation that formed the Health Information Technology Steering Committee, and we were a volunteer group, pretty much the same group. And then in 2009, we were more organized, had the legislation redrafted, and got a little money as well. And so if you go to the next slide, part of the results of that were our Health IT Committee was designated as the state entity. So the federal government said each state had to designate, the state designated entity is actually the term for it, in order to receive the high-tech funding. And so the Information Technology Department, which is the agency that I represent, and the committee is staffed from, and the budget for the high-tech committee is through our department. And so therefore, our group is a little bit different in the state of North Dakota in that it is kind of a quasi-government agency, whereas other states have 501c3s, and we might progress to that. But at any rate, we were the state designated entity, and we were then allowed, as you can see on this slide, to receive a $5.3 million grant. And it was part of the stimulus dollars. The High-Tech Act is part of the ERA funding or federal stimulus dollars. And we are our goal is to establish the Health Information Exchange. And as you can see on our slide, we have basically the 4 years to get this thing going, and there's federal match that is at diminishing returns. And so it's a 10-to-1 match in year 2 and 7-to-1 and 3-to-1. In our first phase, it's where we develop our what's called our strategic and operational plan, and then phase 2 is the ongoing operations. So if you go to the next slide, well, what we've done so far is we've developed our strategic and operational plans. We hired a consultant to help us since we'd never done this kind of thing before. And we had our kickoff meeting, as you'll see, about a year ago. And so far, we've completed the project management plan. What we did as part of this planning was we went across the entire state and did an environmental scan. In other words, we interviewed businesses and healthcare providers and clinicians and whoever would come to our meetings to ask them how they felt about health information technology, health information exchange, what did they see as barriers, and their needs, and so on. And we gathered all of that as part of the writing of our plan, which we have submitted. It was due, as you can see, as September 27th of 2010, and we're still waiting for the final acceptance of our plan as are 12 other states. We got our final questions actually this week, which we had turned in our answers, and we're hoping to receive the go-ahead to proceed with procuring a solution. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see kind of a technical diagram. And that's what our health information exchange is, sort in a technical nature. And so what we did this week, actually a subgroup of our committee, was to actually look at vendor demonstrations for the software solution for the exchange of health information technology or the exchange of medical records. And if you look at the big blue box, you can see that part of that technology includes a portal, and so that would be a patient portal and also a provider portal. and there's a record locator service. We in North Dakota are looking for an EMR Lite. As you probably know, many clinicians and many providers in North Dakota are rural providers, and there maybe have one or two doctors in their clinic. They don't have electronic medical records because they really can't afford to provide that service. So one of the things North Dakota looked at is when these vendors come in to provide the information exchange, we're saying to them, can you also give us some kind of an EMR Lite? In other words, some kind of functionality where these doctors and providers can use electronic medical records that's affordable and provide enough functionality for them to be able to meet meaningful use. You can see some of the other things. Meaningful use stage 1 services are like e-prescribing, lab results, and so on. And then meaningful use stage 2. If you're looking at this technically, we are looking at a federated model, not a central model. In other words, all the medical records aren't going to reside in one central repository. They will be back in the providers, in the hospitals or clinics where they reside now, and there will just be edge server connectivity. So infrastructure is very important to us when we talk about this kind of a service, a federated model. Next slide is our timeline. And so right now we're on the left side of our timeline, and of course we just finished our RFP for statewide implementation, and we're reviewing vendors as we speak. And then we hope to have the infrastructure, just the rudimentary HIE built by the beginning of next year. So we need that in place for our providers to meet meaningful use. And as Lynette said in her presentation, meaningful use is key because there's incentives tied to meaningful use. And if you don't make stage 3, there's disincentives. So it's very important that we provide the infrastructure so our providers can receive those incentives. And you can see we have until 2014 to get this all working. If you go to the next slide, one of the things the federal government also provided with stimulus dollars was broadband. And many of you I know are aware of the BTOP program, Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. And so one of the pieces of that was to connect critical community centers in your states. And so our partner in a broadband project was Dakota Carrier Network, and DCN provides the backbone and the broadband connections for state agencies, higher ed and K-12 in North Dakota. So DCN actually applied for a BTOP grant, and with the assistance of the Health Information Technology Committee and other state agencies, we identified critical community institutions that were underserved in the state, that did not have fiber to the door in this case. We had a few K-12 school districts that didn't have fiber connectivity, and we had several healthcare facilities that did not. So DCN applied for and received a BTOP grant, which is $10.7 million, and they also had to have a cash match. In other words, the rural carriers, many small rural telephone cooperatives had to put up a cash match of totaling $4.6 million to do this. And they are committed to having all of this done by 2013. Part of this, however, is we have to get the healthcare facilities realizing that they do need the broadband connectivity, so they need to sign up. So that's one of our challenges. And it doesn't mean that that's free service for those healthcare facilities. They do have to pay, the monthly costs of having the connectivity, but it is important for them to know that they are going to need the kind of bandwidth that's coming available because of the large lab files and radiology and different labs that they have to transmit when they're exchanging medical records. The last one, Lynette talked about this a little bit, was the loan program. We have again asked the legislature to renew our loan program. It will be coming out of the Bank of North Dakota. It's called the PACE program. And it's another, as she said, we had 14 applications last biennium, and we're hoping, I'm sure we'll have as many this biennium. And they're very reasonable interest rate, 1% for healthcare facilities and a 10-year loan duration. And that's really all I had. And we've got on the next slide, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you to go to the next slide and the next slide. If you go to next slide. That was the loan program. And then the last slide here is questions and answers. And I have Sheldon Wolf's information up there. He is our Health Information Technology Director. So if you have more specific questions, he is a better resource than I to answer them because that's his main focus. But thank you very much for having me. And I've certainly enjoyed the session so far today.
Well, thank you, Lisa and Lynette. I just want to make one comment. Lisa and I have had one conversation with the Internet 2 folks to see what she and Lynette are doing in the state with the health professionals, to see if there's a possible opportunity for us to work with the UCAN project in networking these rural health initiatives together nationwide. And we've, like I said, we've had just one initial conversation, and you both have to be commended for the work that you've done in North Dakota. I didn't realize that you had gone so far, and it was very, very interesting. But I think if the Internet 2 people could see that, they'd probably be pretty impressed as to how far you are. And certainly the last mile continues to be a challenge in some places, but you've acknowledged that and you're addressing that. And the grant to DCN will help, certainly go a long way to help. So thank you both for your work and for your participation today. And stay tuned as to whether we take that a step further and become part of a national initiative and to be a pilot for the rest of the nation. I really think we're ahead on that. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to David.
David Givers back. I have 3 housekeeping things that I need to remind you, but I also want to take this opportunity to thank the 2 people whose creativity...
Lynette Dixon wanted to say one more thing.
Just real quick, sorry, because I know you ran over. On that link on the website, we do, Sheldon does put out a newsletter, so any of those listening, if you're interested in staying up on what's going on in our work, he does a really good job on the website.